Well, let's get started. Welcome, everyone. Really want to thank you all for joining us today for our interviews live walkthrough demo, one of our first webinars as a team. Yeah, it's great to have you all here and good to hear where you're coming from. Let's have a little run through what we're going to be looking at today. So first, some introductions. My name's Tristan. I'm the CPO here at Lyssna, and I'm joined by Maureen, our Senior Product Manager at Lyssna. A quick bit of housekeeping before we get into today's demo. We of course have the chat running, so please feel free to chat away in there, ask any questions. And we have a number of moderators from our team on the call as well. So we have Diane, Megan, and Paul. So they'll be able to answer, I think, most of your questions, but they'll also be collating questions that we can come back to at the end. We will be running a poll or two throughout the session, so keep an eye out for that. And when those come up, you can just open the polls tab in Livestorm. If you need to hop off at any stage, that's okay. The session's being recorded, and I think you'll automatically get that recording sent to you by email once it's complete. And lastly, at the very end of the session, we're going to share a link with you in the chat to provide any feedback you have on the session itself and on what you've seen in the demo. So we would, of course, love to hear that feedback. But here's a quick overview of what we're going to cover today. So interviews from Lyssna allows you to organize, manage, and book participants for your moderated research studies. And you can do that from both the Lyssna panel and, of course, with your own network. You can manage and track those participants all together in a single view, and then you can store and analyze the recordings from those interviews. So for today's demo, let me quickly set the scene for you. We're coming to the end of the year, and we've been doing our strategic planning. And let's say we're going to share out that plan with a few interview participants, because we want to sort of validate it with them. So when we do this, we like to do it with both customers and non-customers. So for this demo, we're going to simulate interviewing some Lyssna users, that is our customers, and we'll do that by sharing a link. And we're also going to speak to some non-customers through the panel. So we're going to show you how to do that within a single study. So that's enough preamble. Let's dive right into the demo today. All right, so when we get started here, we're going to start on the Lyssna dashboard. Here you can see we've got a couple of interview studies already in our account. And this one here, strategic planning interviews, that's the one that we're looking at today. You can see that we've got a few sessions booked in already. So we're going to jump into those a bit later on. But first, let's have a look through the process of creating that study from scratch. So we will start with the Create Study button here. And there your options are to create either a test or survey, so these are unmoderated methodologies, or to set up a new interview study. So we'll do that. The internal name here is only visible to your team, so we're going to call this Strategic Planning Interviews, and so this is our demo one. And once you land in your new study, you'll see there's a number of steps. So first is some setup, we'll run through that. Then there's recruitment. You'll be able to look at your list of applicants and review them. View and manage your sessions, and then finally you'll end up with some recordings of those sessions. So that's what we're going to run through. So when setting up your study, the first thing you'll see is some basic information about the study you're setting up. That includes a name and a description, and this is what participants will actually see. So it's important to set their expectations here. So we'll just call this your experience with user research, since this will also include non-customers for us. You can set the session duration to whatever you'd like. We're going to go with the default 45. And you'll then set up the location. We're using the Zoom integration, and that will generate a unique Zoom meeting room for every session that gets booked under this study. If you don't use Zoom, if you use Teams or something else, you can also choose a custom link and either add one link that's used across all of the sessions on the study, or you can add links to the individual sessions if you prefer. And another setting that we're going to enable here actually is to automatically fetch recordings from Zoom Cloud. So we always try to record the interviews if the participant consents to that. And what Lyssna will do is automatically fetch those recordings from Zoom after the session is complete, so that they're stored in a central place. And the next option here is technical requirements. So you can use this if you want to let participants know that you want them to join on a particular kind of device, or maybe not on a particular kind of device. That's maybe a bit more relevant if you're doing a moderated usability test where it really matters what kind of device that they're on. In our case, we don't really mind for the conversation, as long as they have a camera and a microphone. So participants will be made aware of all of this information when they're applying. The next thing that we will set up is our screener. So we have a number of screening criteria for this study, and I've got them prepared earlier here. So the first question we're going to ask is, when did you last perform user research? And we'll provide a range of options here. We will say in the last week, in the last month, in the last 3 months, the last 6 months, or in the last year, or never. And for our purposes, we're interested in talking to people who do research relatively frequently. So we will qualify anybody who says that they did it in the last week or the last month. If it was more than a month, that's probably not very suitable for our purposes, so we'll disqualify any of the other options. But before we roll on with more screener questions, I think we'll do a quick poll of everybody here as well. So we'd love to know, when did you last perform user interviews? So our question here is about user research, but we're going to do the poll about when did you last do user interviews specifically, and we'll have the same options here. So was it in the last week, the last month, the last 3 months, or more? So if you jump over to the polls, there we go, you can answer that question. You can see the votes are flowing in here. Let's give everyone a few more seconds to pop their answer in. All right. Got a good number of answers coming in, and it looks like a bit of a spread, but quite top heavy in the last month and in the last week, making up the majority of the answers here. A few folks in the last 3 months and just a couple longer ago than that. So clearly a pretty engaged group of researchers we have on the call. Thank you. All right, let's add a few more quick questions here. The next one we will add is, do you use Lyssna for user research? So as I said, we're looking to speak with customers and non-customers. So this is a simple yes or no. But in this case, we're going to qualify both options, and that's allowed with these screeners too. So if you have some questions you want to ask, multiple choice questions that don't impact the qualification, you can put those in as well and just qualify all of the options. We're also going to put in a couple of text questions. So we'll ask, please tell us about the type of user research you perform most often. And we'll make that a long text, give them plenty of space to write. And lastly, we'll ask people, what is your job title? So these questions don't impact their qualification status, but we will be able to review their answers, and that'll help us choose who we want to speak with if we have options. So that's it for setting up our screener. The next thing we're going to look at is the team members involved in this study. So you can add as many people from your team as you like to each study. And what that will do is every team member on the study will automatically be added to all of the sessions that get booked in. And that means they'll be added to the calendar event, they'll get reminders, so they're expected to attend. So I'm going to add Maureen here. Under the team members is also where you manage calendars. So Maureen and I have both connected our Google account to connect up to our calendars. And you can see here that we're checking availability on those calendars to find out which times should be free for participants to book in. So I've got 2 calendars selected here. I've got a range of calendars that I'm subscribed to, but I've got here my work calendar, and this one's my personal one as well. So no one will be offered a time that I have a work meeting or say a personal appointment. I can see that Maureen's got 1 calendar connected as well. And the other calendar we'll choose is just the one where we want the events to be actually added to. So the way that we do this on our team is we have a shared research calendar, and we like events to be added into that one. That means that there's a common place that someone can come and look at all of the research that's happening across our team. But as I said, all of the team members on the study are added as guests to those events, so they will appear in our calendars too. And the last thing to note here is the role. So I'm currently set as the main host because I set up the study, and Maureen is the co-host. All that really does is it ensures that the comms to participants come from myself. So we like to have one common point of contact for all of the participants. So any confirmations or reminders, any comms to participants about the study will be sent from me. And if they reply, those replies will come back to me as well. Next, we're going to set up our general availability. So along with not booking things over existing events in our calendars, you need to set some general parameters for when you want the sessions to take place. So first we have a date range here. All of the sessions will have to fall within those dates, and some general hours of the week that were available. So the defaults here are sort of Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, which they are the hours that we work. But if you didn't want to work on a particular day or didn't want to take those sessions on a particular day, you could turn that off or change the hours. And another option you have is if there's a particular date that your hours are going to differ from these defaults, then you put that in as an override. So let's say on December the 18th, let's say I'm not available in the morning, so I'm going to change this to 12. So on that day, I'm only available 12 to 5. And we'll put that in as an override. Lastly, we're going to set some buffers. We like to have at least 10 minutes before and after the sessions to prepare notes and consolidate notes and just make sure we're all ready. And that's also going to ensure that the sessions don't run back to back. And finally, a minimum notice period. So the default here is 24 hours, and we'll just stick with that. That just means that no one's going to be able to book in a session sooner than that. So we'll have plenty of notice to get prepared. Also on this page, you can just see a list of the automated emails that participants receive. So that is things like confirmations and reminders as the sessions draw near. And if you want to see what any of those look like in detail, you can send off a preview to yourself. So that's the whole setup process. Moving on from there, the next step is, of course, to recruit. So as I said earlier, there are 2 options for recruitment, and you can use them both within a single study. So you can recruit from the Lyssna panel, and you can recruit from your own network by setting up a link and sharing that out. And you can do multiple of each. So you can make multiple orders from the panel. Maybe if you want to target some different people in different demographics, you can do that. And you can create multiple links as well, which sometimes makes sense if you want to send it to different segments of your audience, maybe have different incentives for different segments. So that's all accounted for. So Maureen is later on going to show you recruiting from the panel, but first let's have a look at setting up a link for your audience. All right. The first and sort of most important option when you're setting up a link is the selection method for participants. So your options here are handpick and automatic booking mode. Automatic mode means that if somebody passes your screening criteria, they're going to be invited to book in a time straight away. Handpick mode, on the other hand, means that we will collect their application and their screener answers, but they won't be able to book in straight away. You'll get a chance to review those applications and then decide who you want to send out invitations to as a second step in the process. So handpick is a little bit slower, but you do get more control over who you speak to. Automatic is a bit quicker, maybe good if you think that your applicants are sort of pre-qualified in some way. So because we're going to be sending this to our customers, they are pre-qualified, and I'm just going to go with automatic booking mode for this. You can also choose how many sessions you want to be booked in through this link. I'm going to set that to 6 so that we're not inundated. And lastly, an incentive. So I'll put in here that we're going to offer a $50 Amazon gift card as an incentive here. At the moment on Lyssna, incentives, this is just a simple text field, so you can enter anything you like in here. And what this does is it informs participants what they're going to receive in return for their time. And it also will later on allow you to keep track of who you have and haven't paid. So we'll look at that in a bit. But that is the complete link setup. So we could copy that and send it out via any channel we like. And I'm actually going to hand it over to Maureen now to walk you through what participants see at that link.
Great, thanks Tristan. So I'm going to take you through what your participants from your own network will see once they click on that link. So for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to pretend that I am Maximilian Lee. I am a product manager and I am currently a customer of Lyssna. So when I land on this screen, I see this applicant page. On the left-hand side, you'll see the details of the study. You'll see the incentive, duration, location that you've set up. And on the right-hand side, the participant just inputs their details. So my name is Maximilian Lee. We also do ask for their preferred name, so you know how to refer to them during the interview. So in my case, I like to be called Max, and I'm just going to input an email. Great, so I'll proceed forward. And now I'll have a series of screening questions to answer because Tristan set that up during that setup. So I'm just going to quickly go through these. And I'll say interviews, and I do use Lyssna, and I am a product manager. Great. And so because I've qualified through those screeners and he has already set it to automatic booking mode, I am able to see the calendar and make a booking straight away. So one thing to reiterate about the calendar is that it takes into account 3 things. So it will take into account the connected calendars of all of your hosts. So making sure that it takes into account your availabilities on those calendars. It also will take into account your general availabilities that you set up, as well as any kind of date overrides you might have input. So you can see here that, you can see if I just kind of click through, you can see that the availabilities differ from day to day, just depending on those different calendars. But in my case, I'm going to proceed forward and I'm going to book for Friday. So I'm going to go with 10 a.m. You can see also that the time zone is based on the viewer's time zone. So I'm going to proceed forward. And there we go, the booking is done. So once the booking has been made, the participant will receive a booking confirmation by email. And in that email, there will also be an ICS file so that they can actually add it to their calendar and they can track that session. The researcher will also receive this confirmation, and both parties will also receive a reminder both 24 hours before as well as 15 15 minutes before. And you can also see here that there are options to reschedule and cancel for your participants. And likewise with a researcher, you're able to do that as well. So now that that booking's been created, I'm going to hand back over to Tristan, and he's going to take you through the flow from the researcher's perspective.
Thanks, Maureen. Okay, so we're back on the researcher side here, and I've moved over to our the study that I showed earlier where we actually have the applicants and the sessions booked in. So this here is the applicants table, and you can see here that we've filtered it down at the moment to just applicants coming from the recruitment link, and there are other filters available to help you narrow down who you're looking at. So we have a number of applicants here, including Max. This application just came in now. And for every applicant, you can see their status. So all of these people have successfully booked in a session, which is great. You can also see their screener answers, but if you want to see these in more detail, it's convenient to click on any of the applicants and that'll open up this drawer. And in here, you can see the applicant's information. So this person is qualified, they've booked in a session. You can see the source that they came from and the incentive that they've been offered. You can also see the details of their session and their screener answers in full. So that's what it looks like to review applicants and specifically ones from your network. But next, I'm going to hand it back to Maureen to run you through doing the same process, ordering from the Lyssna panel instead.
Thanks, Tristan. So now that Tristan has set up the interviews for our own customers, I'm going to go ahead and make a panel order so that we can talk to non-customers. So back on that Recruits tab, you can see that you can place an order here. I'm going to click through to that. If you have placed orders for usability tests before, you will see that this interface is very similar. Putting an order in for interview participants is equally as straightforward. So I'm going to run through it. On the left-hand side, I can set the number of sessions. So for our purposes, we're going to go with 6 sessions. And then we go through the selection method. So similar to recruitment links for your own network, you are able to set it to either automatic, so they can book straight away, or they can handpick. So in my case, I want to handpick because I do want to review the screener answers for the panelists so that I can make sure that I am talking to the right people. And then underneath here are the demographic filters. So again, these are very similar to what you would see for usability tests. And so for the purpose of my study, we're very interested in talking to people who do research. So I am going to speak to product managers. I'm going to speak to marketers. And I'm also thinking, of course, I'm going to speak to UX researchers as well as UX UI designers. So great. And that's pretty much it for my demographic filters. So you can see here on my right-hand side, here is an order summary. A note here that it does note that the language is in English. Currently, for the interface, we only support English. So it does mean that you are still able to make panel orders for other countries. So for example, you might say the Philippines or Mexico, as long as the panelists also do speak English as well. But that is something that we're looking at the moment, just also building that out to support other languages. So here you also see the summary of the study details. You can also see that the screen has been enabled because Tristan had done that previously in that setup. And then here we have a cost summary. So in this instance, we can see here, this one is if you have like a 15-minute interview, you're looking at a total cost of 15 credits. Actually, this one's a bit different, but anyway, sorry. So then if you do a 60-minute interview, it's about 105 credits. And so once you submit that order, you will be able to see the orders flow through in your applicants table. So if I click through here, so what I'm going to do here for the demo though, I've already placed an order previously. So here you can see the order 1. And so I put in a order for 6 sessions. And in this case, there's already been 3 sessions that have already been booked. So I'm going to take you through what that looks like on the applicants table. So if we go to the applicants table, so here are a number of panelists that Lyssna has recruited, and as I can see that they're eligible for your study. So even though I had made a order for 6, I can see there's quite a few number of panelists to choose from. So yesterday when I went into this, I could see that Stan, Oscar, and Job were the right kind of candidates for my study. I could see that they are not currently Lyssna customers. So I thought, okay, cool. I'm going to go send a booking invitation to the 2 of them. But what I'll take you through now is actually sending that invite and that process of it and reviewing it. So we can see that Tobias and Lindsay are 2 new panelists that I haven't reviewed yet. So I'm going to click on them. So let's have a look at Tobias. I can see that Tobias is a product manager, and great. He looks like a good candidate for my study. And then we're going to look at Lindsay. And yep, so Lindsay is a product manager, but she's a student, and they are also completing internship as a product manager. I think that would be very interesting to speak to, but maybe not the relevant person for our study. So I'm going to mark them as unsuitable. So what this does is that you can see here on the list, it will mark them as unsuitable. And note that the panelists will not receive a notification about this, but what this will do for Lyssna is that we will then replace this candidate with another person, so that when you go into this list, whether it be that same day or the next day, you can have new candidates to review, so that you can send booking invitations. But in this case, and also, sorry, one thing to also note is that Lindsay will not receive any kind of notification that they have been marked as unsuitable. And note that this feature is also available for participants in your own network. And yeah, so similar kind of behavior there. So I said I like the look of Tobias, so I'm going to go ahead with him. So I'm going to click with Tobias and I'm going to send an invitation. You can see here in my order of 6, I have 3 sessions available. So I'm going to send one invitation here. And there we go. So the invitation has been sent. So he will receive an email in his inbox with an invitation to book. They have 5 days to reply to that invitation, or they can actually decline the invitation. Again, if they decline the invitation, what will happen is that Lyssna will then try and pair with a new candidate, and you'll be able to come back into here and review that. So now that those bookings have been made, I'm going to pass back to Tristan, and he's going to take you through the sessions tab, so how you actually manage and then actually conduct those interviews.
Great. Okay, so we're over on the sessions tab here. And this is a screen where we're going to be able to view all of the sessions that are happening and being managed under this research project. So they're broken down into upcoming sessions and past sessions. And speaking of upcoming sessions, I can actually see that we have one session coming up very soon with Oscar. Sorry, one thing I forgot to note earlier as well, by the way, is that today for our demo, we're just dealing with fake staging data. So we're mindful of participant privacy. These are all sort of fake names and fake participants. But Oscar, our fake participant, we have an interview coming up in just about an hour. And so that's always elevated on the page here, just to make sure that you see it. You'll receive, as I mentioned earlier, reminders as the events draw near. And you can join those events either directly from your calendar. So let's have a look at that. There's this event coming up here in our calendar. You can see them all slotted in here around other events. Or you can click this join link as well to join the event. When it comes to managing upcoming sessions, there are a few options. You can cancel a session if you need to, and you can click this button here as well to request that the participant reschedule. So as we mentioned earlier, the participant can reschedule anytime they need to if they want. They have links in the emails. It's easy for them to find, and also in the calendar event that they're sent. But if you as the researcher need to reschedule, you can click this button. That'll fire off a request to the participant by email for them to choose a new time, and they'll just go through that same flow and select an available time from the calendar. Some other things you can do when managing upcoming sessions, we of course have a link to the meeting room for that event, and you can see the hosts that are involved. So it's myself and Maureen because we're the default hosts on the study, but you can change this per session if you want to. So let's say that Maureen's told me she's not going to be available for this interview with Oscar. That's fine. I can just remove her from here. And maybe Paul has stepped in and said he's willing to join me instead. So I can just add Paul. And so with that, Maureen's been removed from the calendar event. Paul will be added as a guest to that calendar event, and he'll receive the reminder emails as well. So it's really easy to switch people in and out. And if you want, you could add more people in to have more people from your team sit in on particular calls. We can see as well that for this particular session, yes, we will be fetching that from Zoom Cloud. We're going to have a look at that really soon. So that's it for managing upcoming events. It's all pretty straightforward. And for past events, there are a couple of steps you might want to take as well. So after the event has passed, you have a couple of options. You can either mark it as complete or as a no-show, if that unfortunately happens, or you can request a reschedule. So if the person didn't turn up or if there was a problem, you can also request a reschedule. Whether you want to sort of mark it a no-show and call it there or give the person a chance to pick another time is totally up to you. You have both of those options. But assuming all goes well, you can just mark that one as completed. So let's mark this one with Michael as completed. We're reminded that Michael was promised an incentive. And so there's an option here to mark the incentive as paid if we have already paid that. Let's imagine that we haven't paid it yet, and we'll just confirm that the session was completed successfully. You can see here it shows up now as completed and that that incentive is pending. So it's still outstanding. So then we can provision that incentive in our own time. Maybe you would do that at the end of the project. Some people do it after each session completes. Some people do it all at the end. But when it is paid, you can go here and just mark incentive as paid. Great. Now that one is fully complete. That's what it looks like for a participant from your network. From our panel, so this is Stan as a member from our panel. You can see that, by the way, with the little Lyssna logo here is different from the little silhouette. Same process, you just click mark as completed. And then the steps are just a little bit different. You can, first of all, rate the quality of the participant. So this really helps us to know who on the panel is a good interview participant. So let's say that this was good, and you can provide some feedback too, so you can see just great insights. Okay, this is what you get for doing live demos and playing with manually setting up the data. Sorry, so that's my bad. This won't happen to you. But all that does is, once you mark a session from the panel as completed, they'll automatically release the incentive to them as well. So you don't need to do anything there. Lyssna handles the incentive from end to end. So that's management of sessions. And the very last step in the process that we're going to run through is looking at recordings. So I'll hand it back to Maureen.
Thanks, Tristan. So I'm going to take you through the recordings tab of your study. And so here you can put all the recordings across your interviews in one place, whether these be sessions with your own participants or whether it be from the Lyssna panel. You'll see here that session that was upcoming, Oscar. You can see that there's an auto fetch from Zoom Cloud queued. And so what that means is when Tristan had set that up, he had toggled it on. So when that session ends, what will happen is we will fetch that automatically from Zoom if it's available, and it will show in this page. You will receive an email notification once that video is available. But I'll show you what it looks like once the video is in there. This is an interview that we did the other 2 days ago. So you can see that the video has been already fetched from Zoom. And then it's as simple as just producing a transcript as well. So you just click this button. It takes a few moments, it takes a few minutes to actually create this transcription. And similar kind of thing, you will receive an email notification once the transcription is ready. So I have one here prepared already. So Sam Crawley. So you will also see in terms of features that we do also have automatic speaker detection. So we have that here. You're able to update those, and you're also able to watch the video at certain points of the transcript. So I might click here. There we go. So that's a little bit of a demo of how those recordings work. So once you have all of those in there, you're able to share that with your team members, with your stakeholders, or you can add it to your documentation, whether that be Notion, Confluence, or whatever documentation you use. So that concludes the demo part of our session today. What I wanted to note was that everything that we went through is part of the free plan. So we're very excited for you all to start using it as part of your moderated studies. Love to hear the feedback. And as you know, this is something that we're very, very excited about. And also, before we jump into the Q&A, we just want to let you know also that behind the scenes, we're also already very busy. I know Paul's been answering quite a few questions around some of the features that people have been asking about, but behind the scenes, we're already working on a lot of feature enhancements. These includes kind of additional customizations with the setup, more kind of integration opportunities, so the Office 365 integration, as well as just working on that recordings tab as well, so that there's more powerful integration, powerful insights capabilities as well. So we'll jump into the Q&A now and we'll see what we have.
Great, thanks, Maureen.
Thanks.
Well, thank you everyone, for watching this demo today. And it seems like there's been a good number of questions flowing through. Thanks to our friendly moderators for answering most of those, but I think there's a few to highlight and a few that we have saved for the end here. So we'll jump into those. So the first question is, can I add some additional legal docs, such as participant disclosure or an agreement doc from my company? What's the best practice for doing this at the moment? So that is something that we do have kind of in mind for an additional feature that we'll be looking at next year. At the moment, what you're able to do is to include that, I'd say, in your description. And a lot of people for your own network choose to do that sort of as an additional step in the process. So maybe in between receiving the applications and sending out those invitations, or some people prefer to do it after the invitations have been sent and it's booked in, just to get those documents signed off before the session actually takes place. But that is definitely something that we'll be looking to improve in the future. The next question was from Olivia. She said, if you requested 6 participants from the panel, how many do you receive to review and accept or mark as unsuitable? Good question. At the moment, we've set this to shoot for twice as many. So if you requested 6 participants from the panel, you would get at least 12. You may get more. And the important thing to note here is that when you mark somebody as unsuitable, then Lyssna will automatically and kind of immediately start sourcing more people to replace those. So the process would be that you could look through that initial list. Maybe there's some people to invite, maybe some people are not suitable. Mark those as unsuitable, and you'll automatically get sort of refreshed with more people to choose from. And in that way, you can find enough qualified people to speak to. Olivia asked, how much does the transcription cost, or is that included with the credits and participants included? Good question. There's no additional fee for the transcription, but it is something that is an allowance on your plan. So there's an allowance on the free plan, enough to sort of let you try the feature and see how it works for you. But there are much more generous allowances on the basic and pro plans. So that's the way you would get access to transcriptions. Rio has asked, can I store recordings as a URL and not as a file? I would like to use some of my other services for speech recognition, but would like to hold all the recordings in one place. That is a good question. Not at the moment. At the moment, we have support only for actually hosting the video file with Lyssna, whether that's pulled from Zoom or one that you upload automatically. But along with other artifacts from the interviews, so, maybe notes that your team has taken, I think we will be exploring options here around, how else you might want to do this. And that could include just including a canonical link to the recording wherever you normally store those. So if you have more feedback about what you would like that to look like, that would be great. Hopping to the next question. Is it possible to invite an already interviewed person for another interview? For example, if I want to talk to the same person about changing their opinion on some new feature. Good question. So following up. If it is from our panel, unfortunately, you're not able to do that at the moment, but it is something we hear from time to time, wanting to go back and re-interview the same panelist, or in unmoderated context, follow up with an additional survey. So that is something that we have in mind. From your network, you can do that, of course, by just sending a follow-up link maybe for an additional study. And we definitely do have our sights set on allowing you to take those people who have applied to a study and manage those as a database of participants that you might reach out to for future studies as well. The next question is from Ravi, who asks, your pricing says unlimited recruitment from our panel, additional costs apply. What are these additional costs? So as Maureen sort of ran through that process of placing the order, you would have seen in the order form, it's a price per participant, and the price depends on the length of the interview as well. So I think for a 45-minute interview, as we did in the demo today, that's a $90 price, and that includes the incentive as well. So it's $90 and nothing more per interview there. I think that those were all of the questions that our team had highlighted for us, but I'll keep a quick eye on the chat as well. If you have any additional questions, we're happy to answer them. Good to hear, Rio mentioned that likes the idea of a personal participants database. Definitely something we're excited about too. I caught a question as well about how do we handle participant privacy, and particularly from our panel. So that's a good question and an important one. So a couple of things there. You may have noticed in the demo that in the applicants table, and I can in fact just show you since we're here. So I'll remove this filter so that we're looking at all of the applicants, and that'll be people from the panel and people from your network. So people from your network, you can see their full name as well as their preferred name, which may differ from their first name, as well as their email address. So this is the sort of personally identifiable information that we need to handle really carefully. Members from the panel, you'll notice that you're only seeing their preferred name, so we're not providing their full name, and we're also not providing their email address. And panelists have been sort of educated and informed that during these interview sessions, they shouldn't be expected to provide any personally identifiable information. And we'll mention to customers as well that they shouldn't be requesting that through these interviews either. Ravi also asks, Maureen mentioned insights. Could you speak more to that? Maureen, I might handball this one to you.
Yeah, sure. So what we're looking at, we've been talking to a lot of customers already about, how do they handle the kind of synthesis and the kind of insights analysis. So what we're looking at is things like tagging. being able to pull kind of clips from those videos as well, and also being able to kind of share kind of like summaries of those insights. And potentially also having more integration with other kind of tools that you might be using to kind of synthesize, the kind of findings from your studies. And also, I think one of the big ones that everyone is kind of excited about is really just the whole summary side of things. In this example, like we've been doing almost like 12 interviews. So how do you kind of synthesize and potentially summarize them using AI? So these are kind of pieces that we're already currently looking at. I'm very excited to kind of start building in as betas into the feature. So hopefully that answered your question, Ravi.
Great. Another one from Mary, who asked, can you expand on the incentives? Are those included, or is that something we need to source and provide to participants ourselves? Great. So from our panel, it is fully included and fully automatic. So once you mark that session as complete and say that it went successfully, that's when the incentive will be released. For the incentive from your network, that is something that at the moment you have to manage yourself. So Lyssna is just handling for you there, informing the participant of what the incentive is going to be and keeping track of whether or not you've paid it offsite. But that is definitely one of our high priority feature additions for the new year, is an integration, very likely with a tool like Tremendous. We know that's a popular one for provisioning gift cards and things like that. Shannon asked, any suggested workarounds for those of us with Teams or Outlook, so that the sort of the Microsoft suite for the time being? Yes and no is my honest answer. I think there are some workarounds. You could, for the sake of calendaring, the approach that we've taken generally is to offer up full availability and then to exclude times that are not available. And for that approach, it's pretty critical that you can connect your calendar. But an alternative that you could do is to take an approach of basically providing explicit interview slots. So you might say, we're going to offer one slot on Tuesday afternoon at 3 o'clock and two slots on Wednesday at 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock. So you could open up just those times and then make sure that you're keeping those times free in your calendar as well. So that is a workaround. But the reason I say yes and no is, I think we kind of recognize that it's pretty essential to have that calendar connection. And so we are definitely prioritizing in integration with the Microsoft calendars as well. That's something we're looking at right now. And in terms of Teams as well, for the interview sessions and the video calls, that's something that you can do. So instead of using that Zoom integration, you can provide custom links. And so there your options would be either to create one Teams room that is used for all of the interviews and just paste that into the interview study settings, or you can go into each session and add a Teams link automatically. So again, a little bit more manual, but that would still work. And we're definitely looking at that integration in the new year. Olivia asked, I might handball this one to you as well, Maureen.
Sure.
Is there a limit on the number of screener questions that can be asked?
No. So I guess the straight answer is there is no limit to the amount of screener questions that can be asked. But of course, we want to also just take into account best practice. One of the things to note is that we do show an estimate. So at least in the case of ordering from our panel, we do show you an estimated time for fulfillment based on your order. But I guess like with the screener questions, the more screener questions you have, or the more kind of, selective your screener questions are, it may impact the actual fulfillment of that order. So I think it's just about striking that right balance of, the screener questions, as well as, using, if in the case of using our panel, using the demographic filter options as opposed to the screener questions.
Still a little bit more clarification on the pricing here. Somebody else. So it's a yearly subscription or monthly subscription plus the interview fee. So sorry, no, to clarify that, interviews from our panel. So if you're interviewing from our panel, there are very few relevant restrictions. So all of the features are available. As Maureen said, everything that we showed today was sort of available on the free plan. And that includes the session limits per month. Sessions from our panel don't count towards that. So the fee that you pay, in this case, it was $90 for a 45-minute interview. That is the full fee that you would need to pay for a panel, and you wouldn't need to necessarily be on a paid plan to do that either. So you can definitely do that under the free plan. The paid plans provide allowances for more sessions per month from your own network specifically, as well as greater allowances for things like video storage in terms of that data storage and transcription limits too. I hope that helps to clarify, but if you still have any questions about the pricing, do feel free to jump in the chat. I know our team are in there sort of offering some more information too. Another question from Rio. I saw that you could identify a location for the meeting where you had online call. Are there any extensions for offline clients, integrations designed here? Great. So I think we're talking here about in-person sessions. That's a good question. In-person sessions seem to be less and less common. That was what we found in our research as we were sort of designing early versions here. So we sort of put that out of scope for our earlier versions of the feature. But aware it's still something that people do and is definitely something that we could look to in the future. So that'd be great to hear if you're doing offline research or in-person interviews. Yeah, it'd be great to hear that maybe in the feedback document that we share out soon. Another good question from Ravi. Do you have some templates to conduct the actual interviews? We have ours, but we'd love to see your best practices. Great question. We don't have that as part of the feature itself, but I know that our content team is often working on templates and interesting sort of guides like this. So we are producing guides around different ways that you can conduct these interviews, for different purposes, ways that you might do moderated usability testing. And I know that something people have asked about as well is how can I use this interviews feature in combination with the unmoderated testing that we have at the moment. So that would be, prototype testing, getting people to look at designs, choose design preferences and things like that. So we might produce some guides around how you can book people in for an interview and then also utilize the unmoderated test that we have, but in a moderated way to get them to go through those activities with you on a call. Great. And I think our team has just shared some links in the chat to some of the guides that we already have published on that topic. Clarification here, yes. We're testing an AR application, so that has to be in real life. That absolutely makes sense. Great. I'll give it just a minute more in case there are any more questions we can answer for you. But as we come to the end here, yeah, just a reminder that we'll be sharing in the chat a link to a feedback survey. We really would love your feedback on this webinar and on the interviews feature from what you've seen in the demo today. Obviously, as we've covered, there's a lot of ground that we have in mind for improvements in the new year. So we definitely want lots of feedback from people like yourself to help us to prioritize those improvements as we get into it. Great. Okay, well, I think the questions have slowed down. So if you do have any further questions after the session, please feel free to get in touch. You can sign up for a free account if you haven't already. And the best way to get in touch is probably through your account. There's an intercom chat down in the corner. We've got a very friendly and knowledgeable support team who can help you out with any questions. And yeah, we would love your feedback again. So please keep an eye out for that survey link incoming. Oh, there it is, just shared a moment ago. Yeah, and we would love to hear from you. But thank you once more, everybody, for joining us today. It's been great to share this with you. And yeah, we're really excited to see how you use this feature and to hear your feedback.
Thanks, folks. Have a great day.
Take care, everybody.